Hashtag Free Rayshawns on Quibi has 3 Emmy nominations, including one for actor Stephan James. I'm Riley Chow of Gold Derby. Now, how did they pitch this project and story to you?
Actually, I had a lunch with our producer Antoine Fuqua, and he sat me down and just explained that he wanted to do essentially a modern day take on Dog Day Afternoon, and I mean that's one of my favorite films of all time. Obviously, the great Al Pacino. There's something about just contained thrillers, edge of your seat sort of films that all take place in a very refined space that was really interesting to me. And of course, it just struck me as an important story to tell, just given its social messages.
And did you have to audition for the part, or they just found you and wanted you?
No, fortunately enough, Antoine Fuqua was really excited to have me be a part of it, and I shared the same level of enthusiasm.
And do you know what it is from your past work that he responded to?
I'm not sure. He did say that he was just a fan of my work, and so I can't really tell you what he saw. You probably have to ask him.
And I'm wondering for the pitch, or at what point you knew how the story would end.
Um, Actually, that's interesting because there were a few variations of the script, and it wasn't until sort of the 11th hour that Seith Mann, our director, had come up with an ending that he was happy with, or one that he felt was appropriate. And so I kind of find out. I want to say just a little bit before we actually get to shoot it.
And what do you think it says about where the story ends and how it doesn't continue beyond where it ends?
Yeah, I mean, I think the ending is probably, without giving any spoilers, probably, one of the unfortunate things about, stories like this. I think why it was so important for us to be a part of telling this story is because even though these characters are fictitious characters, they're representative of real people and very real circumstances. We're seeing that all too often in the headlines. That we don't want to ignore something that exists. And so I think oftentimes as artists you speak to it in art, and so that's what I feel like we were able to do with this piece.
And what kind of real life stories did you research in preparing for this role?
I mean, look, the source material is ample, to say the least. Unfortunately, I mean, you look at Philando Castile, you look at Laquan McDonald, you look at George Floyd. Um, you know, Most recently, you look at Jacob Blake, and so these things are happen far too often in the news cycle. Far too often, we have to wake up and see our brothers and sisters being, who are unarmed, being killed by the police. So for me, I don't think that we could have anticipated sort of the timeliness of this piece. But again, as artists, this is what you do it for. You do art that really speaks to life and speaks to society. And you hope that it raises awareness and sparks discussions, and challenges perspectives. And so I think that that's the biggest thing that I'm hoping that Free Rayshawns does.
I feel like Rayshawn is so resigned to his fate kind of across the series, where he keeps making choices where it seems like he has an out and he doesn't take it. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think that it's a very tricky situation, as a Black man in this country. I think that you almost feel doomed before you get to accept your fate. And so I think that, over the course of these 15 episodes, Rayshawn has to constantly weigh, his safety, versus, the safety of his wife and his son, and, how he's able to manage the situation so that he gets everybody else out safely, but also gets to prove and fight for his innocence. Something that's seeming like it's going to be almost impossible to do at this point in time. And so I think the whole thing is really a balancing act. I mean, you really get to be a fly on the wall to see what it's like to be see what it's like for this young family, you know, going through this sort of turmoil and sort of the decisions that they're going to have to make up front. You know, knowing that they're very susceptible to the what would eventually happen in the show.
I feel like, as with many shows, so much conflict would be resolved if he would just open up with his wife. But that's kind of a conflict for maybe the first half of the show where they're on different levels in terms of what they know. Why doesn't he share more with her?
Yeah, I think that, you know, in a way, Rayshawn is trying to protect her. You know, I think that he thinks that less is more, and he'd rather not divulge the whole situation right off top. You know, it's a tricky thing, you know, to have to, you know, tell your wife that, you know, I was a part of you know, I was doing some things to make the rent. You know, I was, you know, dealing small time drugs, and you know, you didn't know this, but this is something that I had to do for my family because, you know, I was a free Rayshawn. Rayshawn was a Marine, an ex-Marine who had served for his country, you know, gave his life for his country and came back to America and couldn't get a job. And so in turn, he's ending up having to deal these small petty drugs. And I think that's telling all in itself that this is a man who gave his life for his country and his country couldn't give him a job. You know, we're supporting his child and his wife. And so unfortunately he had to do something which a lot of young black men in this country have to do, you know, attaining, you know, money by sometimes illegal means. And so, you know, nevertheless, you know, Rayshawn ends up getting set up, and then the tables turned, and he's, you know, he has to fight his way out of this. But I think it's very, very telling that, you know, you have this young man in a situation where he had to do something that he's having to even hide from his wife and his kid just out of pride, just for their survival.
Now, the show takes place across one day. It all happens so fast, so I'm wondering how you manage the tone of that so that it's not kind of monotonous, even though it's kind of all happening at the same time.
Yeah, you know what? I think the monotony of it is just part of it, especially with the nature of this particular shoot. You know, it being predominantly shot in one location, the long sort of draining nights. You know, we shot a lot of nights, and look, it was a labor of love. You know, I don't think that there was ever a moment where we could just relax, um, you know, fully relax. You know, we always understood the stakes of this story and what was at, you know, what was at stake rather, as far as the importance of getting these characters right and getting this story right. And so you take a bit of that home every day. And I think in a way it helps with the psychology of the character. So to answer your question, you don't really escape it. You embrace it.
Yeah, so much of your story takes place in just that one room in that apartment. But so I was surprised to find that you actually did shoot in New Orleans. So
Yeah.
why was that important?
Well, the New Orleans of it all, you know, that's where the story was set. So, I mean, I guess we kind of had to go there. But, but yeah, I mean, you know, for me, I think seeing just New Orleans as a backdrop, sort of on Lawrence's side, more so from the police officer's perspective. I think you're just taking a town in Middle America, and you're just shedding light on some of the things that go on.
So you've been nominated for an Emmy for Outstanding Actor in a Short Form Series. For consideration on the Academy website, you've submitted the fifth episode titled Face to Face, which is actually the same episode that Lawrence Fishburne has submitted. Can you tell me about why it was important to showcase your work with him?
Look, I mean, that's a legend. You know, Larry Fishburne is part of the reason why I'm acting today. You know, for me, I had like a geek out moment, just even being even sharing the screen with him, sharing that scene with him. I wish I had more to do with him, but you know, I just feel like as actors, you know, he's so giving. You know, ultimately that you know, that from an artist of that stature, it's infectious. And so, you know, I was able to give back to him in that scene, and we were able to create the moment that you saw there. But ultimately, just I feel like we both raised our you know, our level of intention and intensity in that scene, and so that's why I felt it was the most fitting. That, and I'm a huge Lawrence Fishburne fan.
Yeah, I mean, on screen in the show, he's amazing. But what about behind the scenes? Like, what distinguishes him when you're actually working with him?
Oh man, just a gifted and gracious artist. You know, as actors, you know, you can only hope that your scene partner is giving you as much as you're giving them. And he totally does that and some. You know, he's a consummate professional, and of course, you see it, in his work. But the human being he is, the way he comes to work every day, the preparation, the willingness to try and push the scene, to its limits. I think it's admirable, and I think we all followed suit. So, I mean, he's a legend. I'd work with him again any day.
And what kind of preparation do you do? Like, you get the script. What are your next steps before you actually start shooting?
Well, I think you try to understand the mind and the psyche of this character. Every project is different, but for this, I was lucky enough to have, some gun training from some other films that I've done. I worked with SWAT very, very carefully on Free Rayshawns as well, and ex-military personnel, just to make sure that some of the stealth and physicality of Rayshawn moving around this tiny apartment came through. It was really, as much as it was a psychological, emotional performance, it was a physical performance. And so I had to really tap into what it meant to be, this ex-Marine, navigating his safety in this tiny apartment.
I want to ask about shooting for Quibi because Quibi, their tagline is that they're movie quality content designed for your phone. But with hashtag Free Ray Sean, it's actually shot in, I think, 21 by 9. So even if you're watching it on your phone, then you can only see it only takes up like half the screen because there's still black bars. I'm wondering what the decision making was behind that if you're involved in that.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. You would have to ask Quibi. As far as from my perspective as an actor, nothing really changed. As far as what we did, I felt like I was filming any film that I'd ever made. Everything where it just felt normal. The cameras weren't funny. We weren't doing any specialty shots, or maybe we were. I don't know. Maybe Superman wasn't. I just didn't know. But it kind of just felt like filming a movie.
And what kind of response have you gotten from viewers about the show?
It's been incredible. It's been overwhelming. Honestly, I think that Free Ray Sean was one of those things that I had done. I think that we had all done as a labor of love. And it's probably been a year since we wrapped it. And so in a way, it goes to the back of your mind, because as an artist, you put it out on the table, and the product came out already. Um, so to just see the reactions, the support, to see how much it's resonated with people, particularly in this time, to be recognized by the Television Academy with those nominations. I think it's just a phenomenal thing. We weren't expecting that. I didn't even know it was Emmy Day. So to get the call that we had been nominated for Emmys, I just think it's a remarkable thing.
I think it's different with this project too because you shoot it and you don't exactly know like where it's going to go or how people are going to see it.
Exactly, totally. You're like, what's a Quibi? You just go into it, you just love the art. So I'm just happy for the way it all turned out.
Now, as you're voting for the Emmys, how much are you taking into consideration kind of this call right now to support Black art? And, because that's kind of what they're saying these days is that like this is the way that you can actually put your money where your mouth is and manifest support.
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally, totally believe that. I mean, I think, you're certainly hopeful. I know that I'm hopeful seeing some of the nominations that I've seen. But I think it's important to state that, Black people aren't asking for a handout. We're not asking to be disproportionately favored. We're asking for equality. And it's a very, very simple, basic principle. And I think that, if that's the way we're judging these things, and if that's the mandate that we have for these things, then rightfully so, we would see more, Black artists nominated. And so I'm proud to see it. I'm proud to see more POC nominated this year, more women nominated this year. I think it's all an incredible thing. It makes you optimistic about the future. You hope that, uh, you hope that it goes beyond just this moment in time.
I also want to ask about this other show that you're in this year, Homecoming, which you've been nominated for a Golden Globe before for the first season. Have you heard anything about continuing for a third season?
I don't know. I don't know, Riley. You might have to call Amazon and get the word from me. I haven't heard anything
Okay. And I was very surprised to see your character come back for the second season. Do you feel like there's more story for him if there were to be a third season?
yet. I think there's definitely more story for Walter. I think Walter is one of the most intricate, layered characters I've ever been able to play. So, when I first heard that they wanted me to come back for this second season, I was elated. To come back and sort of tie up some loose ends. But I just feel like there's so much we're still figuring out about Walter, and certainly, conceivably, there is a way to continue his story.
All right. Well, Stefan, thanks very much for taking the time to chat. We have an interview with Jasmine Cephas Jones on our YouTube channel, and you can go to goldderby.com to make your own Emmy predictions.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.